At 5 in the morning, a knock at the door shattered the pre-dawn silence of my apartment. Sharp, insistent, desperate. I opened my eyes instantly as I'd grown accustomed to over 20 years as a detective. Sleep vanished without a trace. Years on the force had trained me to wake at the first sign of trouble. No one comes with good news at 5 in the morning. Hey everyone, let us know where you're tuning in from and how old you are. We hope you enjoy the listen. Outside the window, darkness still lingered, with only the dim glow of a street lamp filtering through the loosely drawn curtains, casting blurry shadows on the ceiling. In March, dawn comes late. The knock repeated. More urgent, rattling, as if the person outside was pouring their last strength into it. Throwing on my old terry-cloth robe, the one Emily had given me last Mother's Day, I rushed to the door without turning on the light. In moments like these, intuition screams louder than reason. My heart pounded wildly, sensing disaster. My hands automatically found the switch in the hallway. The dim bulb overhead flickered on, illuminating the peeling wallpaper in the corners. I'd been putting off renovations forever, always short on time or money. Through the peephole, I saw a familiar face distorted by tears. My heart skipped a beat. Emily, my only daughter, stood on the landing, clutching her enormous belly. 9th month, due any day now. Her light hair, usually neatly styled, hung in tangled strands. She wore only a nightgown and a hastily thrown-on coat. On her feet were house slippers, totally unsuitable for the raw March weather. "Mom," her voice broke as I flung open the door. In the dim bulb's light, I saw what the peephole had missed. A fresh bruise was blooming under her right eye, the corner of her mouth swollen, dried blood on her chin, and that hunted animal look, cornered and desperate. I'd seen it hundreds of times on women victims of domestic violence, but never dreamed I'd see it on my own daughter. I silently pulled her into the hallway and locked the door with all the bolts. From the neighboring apartment came a rustle. Old Nina Peterson, probably woken by the knock. Always up at night, peeking through her peephole, watching the neighbors. Usually it annoyed me, but right now I was even glad. An extra witness couldn't hurt. "Alex beat me," Emily whispered, shuddering with sobs. The words came out between gasps, broken, choked. Because of his new mistress. She called him while we were having dinner. I accidentally saw the name on the screen. Victoria asked who it was. And he... Emily couldn't go on. Tears choked her. Her hands, usually warm and gentle, were now ice cold. I noticed red marks on her wrists, fingerprints from fingers squeezing too hard on fragile bones. I didn't let her finish. One look was enough. My hand automatically reached for the phone on the hall table. I dialed a number I'd never thought I'd use personally. The one saved in my phone as AV Emergency Help. Andrew Victor Lawson, my former colleague, now chief of the local police precinct. The man who owed me for that incident 15 years ago when I didn't pursue the file on his nephew. The rings in the receiver sounded like metronome beats. 1, 2, 3. "Andrew Victor, this is Catherine Reynolds." My voice was steady and calm. Professional habit. "Yes, I know it's early. Sorry, but it's urgent. I need your help." Emily looked at me with eyes wide from fear, wrapping herself in her coat. Under it peeked her nightgown with faded lace, the one I'd given her for her wedding. The wedding I'd paid for from my modest savings because I wanted everything proper for my daughter. 3 years ago, just 3 years. Feels like a lifetime. I pressed the phone to my ear with my shoulder and opened the hall drawer, the one where I kept work supplies. I pulled out leather gloves, the same ones I wore to crime scenes. Black leather, worn at the knuckles, with faint stains that no cleaner could remove. Slowly pulled them on. The familiar feel of leather on skin, a barrier between me and the world of crime, between me and this world's filth. "Don't worry, honey, you're safe now," I said, ending the call. Andrew Victor's words still echoed in my head. "Come right now, I'll set it up. We need to handle this immediately. And we'll deal with Alex by the book." There was no anger or panic in me. 20 years in the system taught me one thing: emotions only get in the way. There was just coldness, cold determination, and clear understanding. Revenge begins, and this won't be just an enraged mother's revenge, this will be justice by the law. I knew the system too well to let some scumbag slip through the cracks. Get undressed and go to the bathroom, I said in the tone I usually used. With victims. How many had there been over the years? Scared, confused, not knowing what to do next. We need to photograph all your injuries, every bruise, every scratch. Then we'll go to the ER and get the assault documented, and then… I didn't finish, but a clear plan was already forming in my head. ER medical exam, police report, gathering evidence, witness statements. Court, prison time for that bastard. Emily sniffled and hugged me tight, burying her face in my shoulder. She smelled of home warmth, vanilla shampoo, and somehow fear. Fear has a smell, I knew that for sure. "Mum, I'm scared," she whispered into my shoulder. "He said if I leave, he'll find me and…" She trembled, unable to finish. "Let him try," I replied, stroking her back. Under the thin nightgown fabric, I felt her vertebrae. She'd lost weight, despite the pregnancy. "You're not the first to face a beast in human form, but trust me, sweetie, I've seen how these stories end. How many passed through my hands. Domestic tyrants sure of their impunity, and this time the ending will be fair. I promise you." I helped my daughter take off her coat. On her arms above the elbows were bruises, finger marks, clear as in a forensics textbook, characteristic signs of forcible restraint of the victim. The phrase from the manual flashed in my memory. Emily heavily sat on the bench in the hallway, stroking her belly. In the bright lamplight, her face looked drawn, shadows under her eyes, and not just from the bruises. She seemed to have aged overnight. "The baby was restless all night," she whispered, as if he sensed it. I knelt before her, wincing at the pain in my joints. Age catches up, especially early mornings, and touched her belly. Under my palm, my future grandson or granddaughter kicked, active, alive. New life that hadn't seen this world yet, but already suffered from human cruelty. "Listen to me carefully," I said, looking into my daughter's eyes. Now she seemed so young, almost a child, like back in her childhood when she'd run to me with a scraped knee. Only now the wounds were far more serious. "You remember what I always told you? There's no force that can stop a mother from protecting her child. Now you'll soon be a mother yourself and understand what that means." I rose from my knees, feeling determination fill every cell of my body. "I'm not just your mother, I'm a detective with 20 years' experience, and your husband just committed a crime against a family member of a law enforcement officer. That's, an aggravating circumstance." Dawn was breaking outside. The sky in the east lightened, taking on a pinkish hue. A new day. In my head, a clear action plan was already building, like in hundreds of cases I'd investigated. Only now it involved my own daughter, my blood. I went to the kitchen, turned on the gas water heater, old but reliable, and put on the kettle. My hands moved on autopilot while my brain calculated options. "Drink some tea with sugar," I said, returning to the hallway. "You need to calm down before the trip to the hospital." Emily nodded, mechanically following me to the kitchen. She perched on the edge of a stool, as if afraid to take up space. That habit appeared after marriage. I'd noticed but stayed silent, not wanting to interfere in my daughter's family life. And look where that led. Emily said, cupping the tea mug with both hands as if trying to warm up. "He wasn't always like this. Remember how attentive he was when we first met?" I remembered. Alexander, Alex, promising manager at a big company, tall, fit, with a bright smile and confident manners, flowers, restaurants, compliments. "Mum, he's so caring," Emily had gushed, and I'd looked into the cold eyes of my future son-in-law and felt something twist inside. Professional instinct? Maternal gut? I don't know. But I stayed silent then, and here's the result. "That's the classic pattern, honey," I said, sitting across from her. "At first, everything's perfect. Flowers, gifts, care. Then control starts. Where were you? Who were you talking to? Why are you late? Then isolation. They cut you off from friends, family, make you dependent. And finally, violence. I've seen it hundreds of times." Emily lowered her gaze, tears dropping into her tea mug. "I thought it was my fault," she whispered, "that I wasn't a good enough wife, that I irritated him." "Remember this once and for all," I said firmly, covering her hand with mine. "Violence is never the victim's fault. Never. It's the aggressor's choice, his and his alone." There was a soft knock at the door. I startled but recognized it immediately. 3 short, 2 long. Nina Peterson, the neighbor from across the hall. "Kate, open up, it's me," came the muffled voice from behind the door. I went to open it. On the threshold stood Nina Peterson, 82, former elementary school teacher, now retiree and the terror of the whole building. Grey hair in a bun, floral shawl on her shoulders, in her hands a pot steaming with aroma. "I made some chicken broth," she said, handing over the pot. "For Emily. In her condition, she needs to eat well." I didn't ask how she knew Emily was here. Nina Peterson always knew everything. Her windows overlooked the entrance, and little escaped her watchful eye. "Thanks," I said simply, taking the pot. "That's a nasty bruise she's got," the neighbor whispered, nodding toward the kitchen where Emily sat. "Husband's work." I nodded silently. "I knew it," Nina Peterson pursed her lips. "Saw him a couple times when he came over. Bad look in his eyes, slippery. I worked 40 years in school, girl. I see right through people. So if you need witness statements, I'm ready to go to your precinct right now." I gratefully squeezed her thin hand. "Thanks, Nina Peterson. Might come to that." "No problem, dear. Justice must prevail. I'm home after 9. Come by if needed." She shuffled away in her house slippers down the landing. I returned to the kitchen with the chicken broth. "We're heading to the hospital now," I said, helping Emily up. "Then we'll stop by the precinct. I've got a good guy on duty there. He'll take your statement." "And then?" "And then?" Emily asked, looking at me hopefully. "And then the fun begins," I replied, throwing on my coat. Old, well-worn, but comfortable. The same one I'd worn to hundreds of crime scenes in my career. Revenge begins. "And trust me, honey, your Alex will regret ever laying a hand on you." I helped Emily get dressed, carefully buttoning her coat, wrapping a warm scarf around her neck. These simple maternal gestures took me back 25 years, when I'd get little Emily ready for daycare, just as vulnerable, just as precious. "Mum," Emily said quietly, reaching for the door handle. "What if he's right? What if I really am a bad wife?" I took her by the shoulders and turned her to face me. "Look at me," I said firmly. "There's no misdeed that justifies violence, no words that deserve blows, no wife who should endure abuse. Remember that, and never, hear me, never excuse him again." The landing was quiet, neighbors still asleep. It was a weekend. We went down the stairs. The elevator in our building had been out for ages, like much else in this old 5-story on the edge of town. Stepping outside, I dialed another number. "William, it's Catherine." "Yes, I know it's early. Need your help, urgent." William Stevens, my former colleague, now head of trauma at the city hospital. Another debtor from the past, the cold March wind tousled hair snuck under collars. But inside me a fire ignited, the kind that lets mothers lift cars off their trapped kids, the kind that won't let you give up when all seems hopeless. "Everything will be fine," I told my daughter, helping her into my old Chevy. "I'm with you now. And no one, hear me, no one will dare hurt you again." The car pulled away, carrying us from home toward the rising sun, toward the justice I'd sworn to achieve at any cost. Hospital hallways at 6 a.m. are half empty. Rare nurses glide over linoleum like ghosts, shuffling in worn slippers. The smell of bleach mixed with meds hits you, so familiar, so hated. Over 20 years on the job, I'd seen plenty of hospitals but never got used to that smell. The smell of human pain. Emily walked beside me, leaning on my arm. Her gait had changed, heavy, unsure, as if each step hurt. Probably did. The bruise under her eye stood out sharper in the bright hospital lighting, her split lip starting to swell. "Catherine Reynolds," William Stevens came toward us. Stocky, with grey temples and an attentive gaze, he was one of the few doctors I trusted unconditionally. "Come right to my office." He gave Emily a professional once-over, lingering on the bruise and belly, but didn't comment. Years in the hospital had taught him not to ask extra questions. The office was warm and smelled of coffee, strong and bitter. On the desk sat a worn thermos and a couple mugs. "Have a seat," William Stevens pointed to the exam table. "Emily, I'll examine you now. Don't be afraid." He worked silently, focused, palpating the belly, listening to the fetal heartbeat, gently probing bruises and scrapes, jotting notes in the chart now and then. Blood pressure's high, he finally said, swelling in the legs. Risk of preeclampsia. How long till due? 2 weeks, Emily whispered. Uh-huh. He thoughtfully scratched his chin. Could be preterm. Stress is no joke. And with these injuries. He shook his head. Catherine Reynolds, a word? We stepped into the hall. William. Stevens closed the door tight and lowered his voice. Kate, this is serious. The girl's got multiple hematomas of varying ages, not the first beating. Ribs show old fractures. You know what that means? I knew too well. Systematic domestic violence. And I hadn't noticed, or hadn't wanted to, 3 years of hell my daughter went through. My fault, my unforgivable mistake. My hands clenched into fists involuntarily. I'll do everything right. William Stevens, draw up all the papers properly. I need clear medical reports on the nature of the injuries when they were inflicted. And I want your personal signature. He nodded. I'll do it, Kate. And one more thing, he hesitated, choosing words. Given Emily's condition, I'd recommend hospitalization to preserve the pregnancy and monitor. No, came a voice from behind the door. Emily stood in the doorway, gripping the frame. No, Mom, I won't stay here. Alex will find me. He has connections everywhere. I hugged my daughter around the shoulders. Okay, sweetie. Then we'll go back to my place, and I guarantee he won't get to you. Catherine Reynolds. William Stevens shook his head. This isn't wise. Medical indications. I'll bring her tomorrow for a checkup, I interrupted, but today I need the documents. As fast as possible. He sighed but didn't argue. Over years of knowing me, he'd learned my character well. Stubborn, like everyone in our family. An hour later, we left the hospital with a full set of documents. Medical report on the assault, pregnancy certificate, exam results. In my coat pocket was a flash drive with photos of Emily's injuries, taken by the hospital photographer. Evidence that left no room for doubt. Where to now? Emily asked as we got in the car. To the police precinct, I replied, turning the ignition. Andrew Victor is waiting. Emily gripped the door handle. Mom, I'm scared. What if Alex is right and no one believes me? He said he has connections everywhere, that reports against him are useless. I put my hand on her shoulder. Listen to me. Maybe your husband does have some connections, but in 20 years on the job, I've built up way more. And unlike him, I know how the system works from the inside. My phone rang, an unknown number on the screen. I hit accept. Hello? Kate, it's Irene, came a familiar voice on the line. Irene Nicholas, secretary to Judge Clarkson, another figure from my professional past. Lawson just called me, told me about the situation. Come straight to us. Clarkson is on duty today. He'll sign the restraining order without delay. I've prepped all the papers. Thanks, Irene. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Be there in 20 minutes. I turned to Emily. Change of plans. First to court. Court? She looked at me scared. Why? For a restraining order. It's a document that bans Alexander from coming near you. If he violates, automatic arrest. Will it work? Emily asked doubtfully. It will, I replied confidently, pulling onto the avenue. Especially when the judge is personally invested in upholding the law. Judge Clarkson, principled, tough and incorruptible, who'd put more than one corrupt official and businessman behind bars, including thanks to my investigations. The drive to court took a bit longer than planned. Morning traffic was building, the city waking up. In the lobby, Irene met us, a short woman with perfect hair and an attentive gaze. Go right to the office, she said. Security's been notified. Judge Clarkson, a tall man with military bearing and piercing eyes, met us standing. He gave Emily an attentive look, lingering on the bruise under her eye, and gestured to sit. Catherine Reynolds, he nodded to me. Long time no see. Unfortunately, not the best circumstances, Victor Paul, I replied, pulling documents from my folder. He quickly scanned the medical reports, injury photos, the statement we'd drafted right at the hospital. Your son-in-law, as I understand, Alexander James Carter, he asked, reviewing the papers. Yes, I nodded. Manager at East Coast Investments. I know that company, Clarkson pursed his lips. Heard about their methods. He turned to Emily. Emily, you'll need to sign the petition. Are you sure you want to start this process? Emily looked at me, then the judge. Her eyes held a mix of fear and resolve. Yes, she said firmly. I don't want to live in fear anymore. Clarkson nodded and handed her a pen. Emily signed the papers with a trembling hand. From this moment, the judge said, adding his signature and stamp, your husband has no right to approach you closer than 100 yards, no right to call or contact you in any way. Violation leads to immediate arrest. He handed Emily the document. Keep this on you. If there's any contact attempt, call the police right away. Thanks, Victor Paul, I said, shaking his hand. Not at all, Catherine, he replied. Sorry we met under these circumstances, but glad I can help. When we left the courthouse, Emily looked dazed. Mum, this is all so fast. I didn't expect it to be so official. Did you think you'd endure beatings forever? I asked, hugging her shoulders. No, but... She faltered. Alex always said no one would believe me, that it's all my fault, that without him, I'm nothing. That's classic abuser tactics, I said, helping her into the car. Isolate, humiliate, make you doubt yourself. But now everything changes. My phone rang again. Screen showed Alex. I showed Emily the screen. It's him, she whispered, paling. Don't answer, please. I ignored her plea and hit accept, putting it on speaker. Hello? Who is this? Came a sharp male voice. Where's Emily? Why are you answering her phone? Hello, Alexander, I replied calmly. This is Catherine Reynolds, Emily's mother. Ah, the mother-in-law. His voice took on fake politeness. Hello? Pass the phone to Emily, please. We need to talk. Afraid that's impossible, I replied in the same even tone I used with suspects. Emily can't talk right now. She's in the hospital. Pause. What happened? Notes of concern in his voice, but I knew his type too well. Fake. You know exactly what happened, Alexander. Assault on a pregnant woman qualifies as aggravated battery. Penal Code section, 3 to 7 years in prison. Another pause, then a chuckle. What are you talking about? Emily fell herself. She's always falling, so clumsy, especially lately. With the belly. Emily has documented multiple hematomas of varying ages, I replied dryly, characteristic of systematic beatings plus old rib fractures. Forensics easily tells fall from blow. What nonsense, his voice rose. Who'd believe that hysteric? She's on psych registry. Emily flinched. I looked at her surprised, but she shook her head. Lie, she mouthed. Stop lying, Alexander, I said into the phone. And for your information, as of today, a restraining order is in effect against you. You can't approach Emily closer than 100 yards, can't call or contact her. Violation means immediate arrest. What? He roared. Who are you to tell me? This is my wife, my property. Now that's closer to the truth, I smirked. Emily's already feeling better realizing who she's dealing with. Listen, you, his voice turned threatening. You don't know who you're messing with. I have connections, money, I'll destroy you. No, Alexander, I replied, feeling cold fury ignite inside. You don't know who you're messing with. I've been a detective for 20 years. I have more connections than you. And unlike you, I know how the system works. I hit end and turned to my daughter. He's lying, she whispered, blinking rapidly. I was never on any psych registry. It's him. He tried to convince me I was crazy, said I made it all up, that I bruised myself. Gaslighting, I nodded. Another classic abuser tactic, make the victim doubt their own sanity. I started the car but didn't move. Emily, sweetie, listen. What you did today is a very brave step. The first step to a new life. But there are still challenges ahead. He won't give up easily. He'll threaten, manipulate, try to regain control. Are you ready for that? She placed her hand on her belly, and her face showed an expression I'd never seen before. Resolve, not despair, not fear. Resolve, I have to be, she said quietly, for the baby. I don't want my son or daughter growing up in a home where their mom gets beaten. I squeezed her hand. Good. Then we're going to the precinct to file for criminal charges. And then, Emily asked. I smiled, not a warm maternal smile, but that cold detective smile that made suspects confess everything. And then we'll start gathering evidence. I suspect your hubby isn't just a hero at home. I've worked too long not to sense these things. I bet he's got dirt at work too. East Coast Investments, familiar name, seems they're under financial audit right now. Emily looked at me surprised. You want to? I want justice to prevail, I said firmly, pulling onto the road. In all aspects. And trust me, honey, when I take a case, results are guaranteed. The phone rang again. This time Andrew Victor's number. Yes, Andrew, I answered. We're on our way. Yes, what? He's already there. Filed a counterclaim. Emily looked at me scared. What's wrong? She asked when I ended the call. Your husband, I replied, accelerating, showed up at the precinct and filed a report saying you attacked him, then ran off. Typical tactic. But he doesn't know we already have the medical exam and restraining order. And now an in-person confrontation. I smiled. And trust me, honey, it'll be a show worthy of the best theatres. I didn't spend 20 years in the profession for nothing. Time to use everything I know. The car sped through morning streets, and in my head a plan formed. Clear, calculated, ruthless. A plan to not only protect my daughter, but punish the one who dared hurt her. And something told me this would be one of the most interesting cases in my career, because this time it was personal. Don't be afraid, I said, glancing at pale Emily. Truth is on our side, and against truth backed by evidence and law knowledge, he has no chance. I pulled into the precinct's staff lot, flashing my badge to the duty officer. He raised eyebrows surprised, hadn't seen me in ages, but let us through without questions. Ready? I asked Emily as we parked. She took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. Ready, Mom? I won't be scared anymore. The precinct hallways smelled of institutional furniture, old files, and a faint whiff of cheap cologne from the entrance duty guy. The scent stirred memories. 20 years of service, hundreds of cases, sleepless nights over files, interrogations, confrontations. I breathed deep. Strangely, here in these drab walls, I felt in my element. Emily walked beside, gripping my hand tight. In the bright ceiling lights, the bruise under her eye looked even sharper, her skin pallor, sickly. A few officers passing by threw curious glances. Some recognized me, nodded hello. Catherine Reynolds, Andrew Victor came toward us. Tall, fit, in impeccably pressed uniform, only grey temples betrayed age. Come to my office, situation's tricky. He led us down the hall to a spacious office overlooking the square. He'd risen high over years of service. Precinct chief, a respected man. Once he'd been my trainee, a green lieutenant who didn't know which end of a case to start. Now his chest bore medals and awards. Have a seat, he pointed to chairs by the desk. Tea? Thanks, not now, I replied, helping Emily sit. What's with Carter's report? Andrew Victor frowned. Standard abuser tactic, file first, pose as victim. He claims Emily lunged at him with a kitchen knife and he was just defending. He looked at Emily. Sorry, Emily, for saying this. I know it's hard. Emily paled further. It's a lie, she whispered. I never raised a hand on him, even in self-defense. Of course, Andrew Victor nodded. You have a medical exam confirming injury nature and age? And him, he smirked. Not a scratch. Still, protocol requires a confrontation. He's here, Emily asked tensely. In the next office with his lawyer, Andrew Victor replied. Showed up with a company suit. Slick type in a $5,000 suit. I nodded, all as expected, throwing a rotten bridge over the law with corporate lawyers. Old song. We need a lawyer too, I said. Daniel Oliver still in the DA's office? He is, Andrew Victor smiled, and he's on his way. I called him as soon as this. He paused for a censored word. Your son-in-law showed with his report. Daniel Oliver, 30 years in prosecution, scourge of corrupt officials and shady businessmen. We'd worked dozens of cases together, and crucially, he had a personal grudge against East Coast Investments after they tried to bribe his son. Perfect. I felt tension ease a bit. With an ally like that, odds shot up. And meanwhile, let's file Emily's report. We already have the medical exam and restraining order. Andrew Victor whistled. You already got a restraining order? Impressive. Though from you, Catherine Reynolds, I expected no less. The next half hour we spent filling papers. With my help, Emily detailed every violence incident she could recall. It made a long, horrifying list. I felt fury ignite inside, cold, calculating. How dare he? How dare he raise a hand on my daughter, on a pregnant woman? There was a knock at the door. Daniel Oliver appeared on the threshold, short, stout, with receding hairline and shrewd eyes behind thick glasses. Classic old-school prosecutor, unimpressive looks, but brilliant mind and iron grip. "Catherine," he nodded to me. "Long time." "Unfortunately, not the best circumstances," I replied, shaking his hand. He turned to Emily, his gaze softening. "Hello, Emily. I'm Daniel Oliver, representing your interests." "Don't worry," he smiled paternally. "Truth is on our side." Emily nodded uncertainly. Daniel Oliver quickly scanned all documents, humming and shaking his head occasionally. "Well then," he said, closing the folder, "pictures clear. Systematic domestic violence, aggravated by the victim's pregnancy, serious bodily harm, plus psychological abuse." He looked at Andrew Victor. "When's the confrontation?" "We can start," he replied. "Everyone ready?" Emily nervously fiddled with her sweater hem. "I'm not sure I can." I took her hand. "You can, honey. Just tell the truth. Look him in the eye and tell the truth. Daniel Oliver and I will handle the rest." The confrontation room was small and stuffy. Table, a few chairs, camera in the corner, institutional setup I knew down to details. When we entered, Alex was already there with his lawyer, a young man with perfect hair and arrogant eyes. Alex looked up, surprise flashing on his face, quickly turning to anger. "Emily," he hissed, "I knew you'd run whining to Mommy as usual." "Don't worsen your position, Alexander James," Daniel Oliver said calmly, sitting across from the lawyer. "Any threats or pressure will be recorded and added to the case." Alex shifted his gaze to me, and something like fear flickered in his eyes. He realized this time it was serious. No getting off with promises and apologies. "Let's begin," Andrew Victor said, turning on the camera. "Confrontation between Alexander James Carter and Emily Thompson Carter regarding domestic violence reports." The next 2 hours were tough. Alex, initially cocky and aggressive, gradually lost control. His story was full of contradictions and holes. He claimed Emily attacked him, but couldn't explain no marks on him. Said she self-inflicted, but couldn't say how she reached her own back. Insisted Emily was on psych registry, but had no papers. Daniel Oliver methodically dismantled every argument, every lie. And Emily, she held up great. Pale but composed, she calmly and clearly told her story, looking her husband in the eye. "This wasn't the first time," she said, her voice growing steadier with each word. "It started about 6 months after the wedding. At first just yelling, insults, then pushing, grabbing arms, then the first hits." "She's lying," Alex flared, "all made up. She just wants to take my kid." "Odd," Daniel Oliver noted calmly. "Yesterday you claimed the kid isn't yours. Witnesses to your words, Alexander James, your secretary for one, with whom you've had an affair for over 6 months. Alex turned red. "Slander. I'll sue." "I wouldn't," Daniel Oliver smiled. "Your personal life becomes public. And we have proof. Photos, texts, witness statements." I looked at Daniel Oliver surprised. Where'd he get that info? Had he run his own investigation in the couple hours since my call? Alex looked gut-punched. He turned to his lawyer, who just shrugged as if to say, "You didn't warn me about this?" "I propose a deal," Daniel Oliver said, closing his document folder. "You, Alexander James, withdraw your false report, admit the facts in your wife's statement, agree to the restraining order terms, provide proper child support, and we might not press charges for aggravated assault." "If I refuse," Alex narrowed his eyes. Daniel Oliver smiled a cold prosecutor's smile. "Then we not only charge you with domestic violence, but initiate an audit of East Coast Investments' finances. I have reason to believe not everything's clean there. And the investigative committee is running a campaign against economic crimes right now." Alex paled. He turned to his lawyer again, who whispered something in his ear. Alex looked cornered. I'd seen that look hundreds of times on criminals realizing the game was over. "I need to think," he finally squeezed out. "Of course," Daniel Oliver nodded. "You have an hour. After that, materials go to the investigative committee." When we left the room, Emily looked drained, but a faint spark of hope shone in her eyes. "Will he agree?" she asked. "He will," Daniel Oliver replied confidently. "No choice. I've been watching East Coast investments for a while. Financial schemes there that half the execs should already be inside. And he knows it." "Where'd you get the affair info?" I asked when Emily went to the restroom with a female officer. Daniel Oliver smiled slyly. "Remember Sandra from the DA's finance unit? Her daughter works at East Coast Investments as a secretary in the next department. She's been observing this. One call from me, and she spilled everything she knew, including corporate party photos and text screenshots she accidentally saw." "Accidentally?" I raised an eyebrow. "Totally accidentally," he replied innocently. "Alexander James's phone was just lying unlocked on the desk. Messages popped up. We exchanged knowing looks. Sometimes accidents are timely." "Thanks," I said, squeezing his hand. "I won't forget this." "Nonsense," he waved off. "Scumbags need punishing, especially those who hit pregnant women. You know, I have a daughter too, about your Emily's age, so this is personal." Emily returned, and we went to Andrew Victor's office to wait for Alex's decision. Less than half an hour later, the door opened and the lawyer entered alone. "My client agrees to the terms," he said dryly, handing over a folder. "Here's the withdrawal of claims, agreement to restraining order terms, and child support obligations." All signed, Daniel Oliver carefully checked every paper, every signature. "Well, seems in order," he finally said. "Tell your client if he violates any condition, consequences will be severe." The lawyer nodded, shot Emily a disdainful look, and left. "That's it?" Emily asked incredulously as the door closed. "He just agreed." "No choice," Daniel Oliver replied. "Scumbags like him are brave only with the weak. Face real resistance, they deflate." "But that doesn't mean he's given up for good," I added, looking at my daughter. "Be ready for him to try manipulating, pressuring, threatening. But now you have legal protection, and I'm here." Emily looked exhausted, but something new appeared in her eyes. Resolve, strength. She straightened her back and placed a hand on her belly. "I'll manage," she said quietly. "For the baby. I won't let him control my life anymore." When we left the precinct, it was past noon. Bright March sun blinded, reflecting in puddles. Spring was claiming its rights, promising new life, new starts. "Let's go home," I said, hugging Emily's shoulders. "You need rest, and tomorrow we'll start on the divorce." "Think he'll agree to divorce?" Emily asked anxiously. "Oh, he will," I replied confidently. "After today, he's learned not to mess with us." "What if he resists?" I smiled. "Well, I have plenty more friends in various agencies." Emily smiled faintly. "First time in this endless day." "Thanks, Mom," she whispered. I didn't know what to do. Didn't think I could escape." "There's always a way out," I replied, helping her into the car. "Always. Sometimes it's just hard to see alone." I started the engine, but turned to my daughter before driving off. "Emily, listen. What you did today is incredibly brave. You stepped onto the path to freedom. And though it'll be tough, I promise, at the end awaits a new happy life without fear, without pain, without humiliation. I'll help you reach it." She nodded, a tear rolling down her cheek. But it wasn't a tear of despair anymore. It was relief, hope. I pulled out of the precinct lot, feeling odd satisfaction. The day was hard but productive. We'd taken the first step. Alex got a serious, unambiguous warning, but something told me he wouldn't stop easily. His type aren't used to losing. He'd still try to regain control, get revenge, intimidate. But now Emily had me, and I was ready for anything. The fight was just beginning, and in this fight, I intended to win at any cost. The next 3 days passed in relative calm. Emily stayed with me in the room that was once her childhood bedroom. We moved essentials from her apartment the day we got the restraining order. The operation was lightning fast. I called 2 former colleagues, now in private security, and we went to Emily's place while Alex was at work. Half an hour, and all her personal items, documents, clothes were at mine. Emily slept almost a full day, physically and emotionally drained. I sat by her bed, listening to her even breathing and studying her familiar features, now distorted by bruises and swelling. A mother's heart tore from pain and anger. How could I not notice? How did I let this happen? On the second day, we started divorce papers. Daniel Oliver helped draft the petition, including all domestic violence details, demands for property division and child support. Better hit all fronts at once, he said, taking the documents to file. If we give him time to recover, he'll build defenses. We'll stun him this way. I watched as day by day Emily began returning to life. Bruises faded gradually, eyes gained sparkle, cheeks a healthier color. She started talking more, even smiling when I shared stories from my cases or recalled her childhood. But something still worried me. Alex. He'd agreed to our terms too easily, retreated too fast. I knew his type too well to believe he'd just given up. He was waiting, preparing a counter-strike, and I had a feeling that strike would be merciless. On the fourth day, as Emily and I breakfasted in the kitchen, the phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, I answered, feeling slight tension. Catherine Reynolds. Female voice, nervous, scared. This is Victoria from East Coast Investments. I don't know if you remember me. We met at Emily's wedding. I racked my memory. Victoria, tall blonde with cold eyes, worked in marketing, and per Daniel Oliver, Alex's current mistress. Yes, Victoria, I remember, I replied cautiously. What do I owe the call? We need to meet urgently. Desperation raw in her voice. I have info on Alex, on what he's planning. It concerns Emily and the baby. My heart skipped. So here's the counter-strike. And who'd think the warning would come from the mistress? Where and when? I asked shortly. In an hour at Lilac Cafe on Main Street. I'll be in a blue dress and red bag. I'll be there, I replied and hung up. Emily looked at me questioningly. Who was that? Victoria from East Coast Investments, I replied, finishing cooled tea. Your husband's girlfriend? Emily paled. Why'd she call? Says she has info on Alex's plans, wants to meet. You're going? Fear in Emily's voice. What if it's a trap? I smirked. Honey, 20 years on the job taught me to spot traps. Besides, meeting in public midday. What could happen? Be careful. Emily squeezed my hand. You don't know what he's capable of. But I know what I'm capable of, I replied, rising from the table. Don't worry, I'll just talk to her, find out what's up. Don't open the door for anyone, even if it seems urgent. I have keys. Half an hour later, I was on my way. Lilac Cafe, a small, cozy spot in the old part of town, known for desserts and dim lighting that let patrons keep privacy. Perfect for such a meeting. Victoria was already at a corner table, blue dress, red bag, as promised. And she looked scared, dark circles under eyes, hands nervously shredding a napkin. When I approached, she jumped. Catherine Reynolds, she half rose, extending a hand. Thanks for coming. I sat across, not taking my eyes off her. Professional habit. Always assess the interlocutor, look for signs of lying, nerves, hidden motives. I'm listening, Victoria, I said, declining the waiter's menu. What's so urgent? She glanced around as if fearing eavesdroppers and lowered her voice. Alex has lost it since the precinct. He's furious. Never seen him like that. He swears he'll get back at Emily, won't let her take the baby. Specifics, I leaned forward. What exactly is he planning? Victoria swallowed nervously. He hired some people. I overheard a phone call. Something about teaching a lesson, scaring. I don't know exactly what he's up to, but it's something awful. He said something about proving Emily's insane, getting the kid awarded to him. Inside me went cold. I'd seen enough to know, not empty threats. People like Alex, losing control, are capable of desperate acts. Why tell me? I asked, studying her face closely. You're close to him? Victoria lowered her eyes, blush on cheeks. I thought I loved him, that he was special. But after learning how he treated Emily, she shook her head. And how he's acting now, it's not the man I knew or thought I knew. She pulled a folder from her bag and handed it over. Here, documents. Financial fraud, East Coast Investments. Alex is directly involved. Faking reports, kickbacks, tax evasion. I work in finance. These went through me. I made copies. I opened the folder and skimmed contents. Indeed, enough for a major investigation. Leverage that could prove very useful. Why help? I asked, closing the folder. This is a big risk for you. Victoria smiled bitterly. You know, I always thought myself a strong woman. Thought with Alex it was different, that he respected me, valued me. But yesterday, she faltered, absently rubbing her wrist, and I noticed a bluish mark. Yesterday he raised a hand on me for the first time over nothing, and I realized I'm next, history repeating. I nodded silently. Classic scenario. Abusers don't change, they just switch victims. Thanks for the info and documents, Victoria. I tucked the folder in my bag. This could be very useful, but I need more details on his plans for Emily. What exactly did he say? When's it happening? She shook her head. I don't know exactly, but he was rushing, said something about acting fast before the baby comes, that it'll be harder after. Chill ran down my spine. Less than 2 weeks to due date, and given Emily's state and stress, labor could start any time. Where's Alex now? I asked, pulling out my phone. At the office, Victoria replied, meeting with partners. It'll last till evening. Good. I quickly texted Andrew Victor to amp up surveillance on Alex. Victoria, I need you on call. If you learn more, call immediately. She nodded, but suddenly her gaze, fixed over my shoulder, changed. Fear in it. Oh God, she whispered. That's... I turned and saw 2 men at the entrance, tall, burly, with cold professional eyes. And I knew exactly who. Ex-Special Forces, now in private security. Types who do dirty work for payers. They scanned the room, one nodded our way. They'd clearly recognized Victoria. We need to go, I said quietly, standing and leaving a bill for untouched coffee. Through the back. Now. We hurried through the kitchen. I flashed my badge to the stunned cook and exited to a narrow alley behind the cafe. They were following me, Victoria whispered, barely holding tears. Lord, what now? Now you come. With me, I said firmly. It's unsafe to go home or work. I have contacts who'll ensure your safety. I dialed Connor, former colleague, now head of security at a major bank. Explained in 2 sentences. He got it instantly. Great, he said. Bring her to my office. We'll set up witness protection top-notch. We quickly reached my car and drove out of town, avoiding main roads. I weaved through side streets, constantly checking for tails. Victoria sat beside, pale and silent. I'm scared, she finally said. I didn't think it'd go this far. Alex is dangerous, I replied, eyes on the road. Way more than he seemed. But now, thanks to you, we know what to expect. I dropped Victoria at Connor's office, made sure she was met and escorted in, and headed home. My head raced, needed to boost security, warn everyone who could help, prepare for possible attack. When I pulled up to home, it was past noon. I went up to my floor and froze. My apartment door was ajar. Heart pounded. Emily. I carefully pulled pepper spray from my bag, always carried, and pushed the door. Hallway quiet, but voices from kitchen. Female, Emily, and male. Alex. I tiptoed closer and froze, hearing the talk. You have to come back, Emily, the male voice said. But not Alex, older, more confident. He's your husband, your baby's father, can't destroy a family. Dad, Emily's voice trembled. You don't understand. He beat me regularly, cheated on me. I can't live like that anymore. Connor, my ex-husband, and Emily's father, whom I hadn't seen in 10 years since he left for a young mistress, abandoning us. I entered the kitchen. Emily sat at the table, pale and tense, across from Connor, still fit and self-assured, though hair silvered with grey. What a surprise, I said coldly, here to defend family values. Connor looked up at me, face a mix of awkwardness and irritation. Kate, he stood. We're just talking with our daughter about her future. Interesting. I went to the table and put a hand on Emily's shoulder. And where were you all these years when her present was decided? Mom, Emily said quietly. Dad came an hour ago, said Alex called him, told him I have psych issues, that I'm making it up. I snorted. And you believed right away. I turned to my ex, didn't bother calling your daughter for her side. Connor pursed lips. I know Alex. Serious, responsible guy, and Emily's always been impressionable, like you. Impressionable. Fury boiled inside. You see this bruise? I pointed to Emily's face. And this? That's impressionable too. Connor went silent, eyes shifting from me to Emily. I didn't know, he finally said. Alex said, Alex lied. I cut him off and used you to get to Emily to pressure her into returning. Classic manipulation. I went to the window and looked out. Below, at the entrance, a fancy import with tinted windows. And two men beside, the same from the cafe. He drove you here? I asked Connor. Yes, his driver, he replied, still confused. And you didn't find that odd? That your daughter's husband cares so much for your comfort? Connor was silent. Finally dawning on him, he'd been a pawn in someone else's game. Emily, I turned to my daughter. Pack essentials. We need to leave immediately. What's going on? Connor asked, looking at me anxiously. What's going on? I replied, dialing Andrew Victor, is your son-in-law isn't just an abuser. He's dangerous, ready for anything to regain control over Emily. And now he's using you to lure her out. And downstairs his people wait, ready to... I faltered, glancing at Emily, ready for decisive action. Connor paled. I didn't know, he repeated. I swear, Kate, I'd never. We'll sort later, I cut him off. Right now, main thing. Emily and the baby's safety. I explained to Andrew Victor in 2 words, and he promised to send a squad immediately. But till they arrive, we had to hold and not let Alex's people up to the apartment. They know you're here, I told Connor, but not that I'm back. That's our edge. I quickly outlined the plan. Connor goes down, says Emily refuses to go with him, needs more time, distracts them. Meanwhile, Emily and I exit through the back and get in the car Andrew Victor sends. It's risky, Connor objected. What if they suspect? Then police arrive and arrest them, I replied. You think they'll risk attacking you midday with witnesses? He nodded uncertainly. Okay, I'll do it for Emily. I gave him a long look. Maybe something remained of the man I'd once loved. The man who'd been a good father till he betrayed us. Thanks, I said reservedly. Go. And be convincing. When the door closed behind him, I turned to Emily. Take only essentials. Documents, meds, phone. Rest later. She nodded and hurried to the room. I looked out the window. Connor was already descending the entrance steps. The men tensed seeing him. One said something, pointing to the entrance. Connor spread hands, feigning helplessness. Good actor, no denying. Phone buzzed. Text from Andrew Victor. Car in 5 minutes. Back exit. Time, I told Emily when she returned with a small bag. Quiet, no sudden moves. We descended the back stairs, narrow, dusty, abandoned. Emergency exit led to the next building's yard. There, as Andrew Victor promised, waited an unmarked car with tinted windows. Behind the wheel, a young guy in plain clothes. I recognized a precinct op. Where to, Catherine Reynolds? He asked as we got in. To a safe place, I replied, pulling out my phone. I'll direct en route. I dialed William Stevens, trauma department head. William, it's Catherine. Need help. My daughter might be in danger. We need a safe spot where she won't be found. He asked no extras, just said, bring her to the hospital. We'll admit her for routine monitoring under another name, security provided. As we drove out the yard, I saw a police car pull up to my entrance. Andrew Victor kept his word. Now Alex's people wouldn't bother us. Emily sat beside, pale and tense, clutching her bag. Where are we going? She asked. To the hospital, I replied, squeezing her hand. You'll be safe there. And me? I smiled a cold, determined smile. I'll handle your husband. Time to put a final end to this story. I looked at the clock. Few hours till evening. Enough time to prep the final act of this drama. An act where Alexander James Carter would answer for everything he'd done. The hospital room was small but cozy, one for staff or special patients. Emily lay on the bed, hooked to a monitor tracking fetal heartbeat. Beside sat nurse Olga Peterson, middle-aged, strict woman with kind eyes, whom William Stevens trusted like himself. All good, she said, checking readings. Baby's heartbeat normal. But you need rest, Emily, absolute rest. I stood at the window, watching hospital grounds. A guard, ex-cop, at the door. On papers, Emily was under another last name, Smith. Supposedly routine pre-birth admission. No one but William Stevens and a few trusted nurses knew who she really was. You sure it's safe here? Emily asked quietly when Olga Peterson left. Absolutely, I replied, sitting on her bed edge. Alex doesn't know where you are. And if he finds out, he can't get in. Guard at entrance, duty in hall. And besides, I smiled. I have a plan. A plan to solve the husband problem once and for all. Emily tensed. What are you planning, Mom? You won't do anything illegal. I took her hand. Honey, 20 years serving the law. Trust me, I know how to act legally, just different ways to apply it. I didn't tell her all details, didn't want to upset, but the plan was fully formed in my head. Clear, precise, merciless. The room door opened. Daniel Oliver entered. Folder under arm, face restrained triumph. Good day, ladies. He nodded and sat by the bed. Good news. Court granted our motion for expedited divorce hearing. Set for next week. So fast? Emily surprised. In exceptional cases, he smiled, law allows fast track, especially with proven domestic violence and threat to life and health. And we, he patted the folder, have more than enough proof. But Alex will surely fight, Emily said quietly. He'll never agree to divorce, let alone my terms. Daniel Oliver smiled slyly. That's where our plan kicks in. See, Emily, your husband is in a very vulnerable spot now. And we have a way to pressure him so he'll beg for divorce. I nodded silently. The way was, documents Victoria provided contained proof of serious financial fraud at East Coast Investments, fake contracts, money laundering, tax dodging, and Alex central to it. Just hand these to investigators and his career ends, not to mention freedom. But first, Daniel Oliver continued, we need to neutralize his attempts to smear you. We got word he's prepping evidence of your alleged mental instability. Emily paled. What evidence? I've never had disorders. Of course not, Daniel Oliver soothed. But it's about faking. Apparently found a specialist to backdate your chart with a diagnosis. Something like emotionally unstable personality disorder. Serious enough to question your ability to care for the child. Fury boiled inside me. How dare he use the holiest motherhood in his dirty games? What do we do? Emily asked, trembling. Preempt him, I said firmly. Get a psych eval today from top experts. I know a professor at the state psych clinic. His rep is spotless, and his report will outweigh any fake cooked up on Alex's orders. Daniel Oliver nodded. Exactly. And then he looked at me. Then heavy artillery comes in. Catherine Reynolds, ready? More than, I replied, standing. Emily, I have to step out briefly. You're totally safe here. I'll be back by evening. Mom, Emily grabbed my hand. Be careful, please. I leaned and kissed her forehead. Don't worry, sweetie. I know what I'm doing. Outside the hospital, Daniel Oliver and I got in his car. Day turning to evening, sun starting to set, painting sky orange-pink. Sure you want to go all the way? He asked, starting the engine. It's risky. Sure, I replied firmly. This man beat my daughter, threatened her, tried to take her child with dirty methods. He deserves everything coming. Daniel Oliver nodded and pulled onto the road. Half an hour later, we were at the Investigative Bureau building, massive grey structure downtown. Anthony Serge, head of Economic Crimes Unit, met us personally at entrance. Catherine, he shook my hand firmly. Long time. Unfortunately, not the best circumstances, I replied. We went up to his office. Spacious, austere, minimal furniture, maximal function. Typical for major cases investigator. So, Anthony Serge sat at desk, hands clasped. I reviewed the documents you sent. If confirmed, this is big. Penal code sections, fraud in large amount, tax evasion, up to 10 years. I nodded, exactly what I counted on. But you need a witness, he continued, someone to confirm document authenticity and testify on the scheme. There is one, I said. Victoria Sanders, Finance Department at East Coast Investments. She's ready to cooperate. Anthony Serge nodded, satisfied. Excellent. Then we have everything to start the case. But, he looked at me closely. Sure you want to see this through. He's your daughter's husband, your future grandkid's father. Husband who beat my daughter, I replied harshly. Father trying to take the child from the mother with dirty methods. He doesn't deserve mercy. Anthony Serge nodded, understanding. I get it. Well, let's proceed. He hit the button on his phone. Call the team. We roll in 20 minutes. Plan was simple. Arrest Alexander right at East Coast Investments office in front of colleagues and bosses. Maximally public, maximally humiliating. Investigators seize documents, search, question staff. Scandal impossible to hush. Coming with? Daniel Oliver asked as we stepped into hall for ops to prep. Yes, I replied firmly. I want to see his face when he realizes the game's over. An hour later, our convoy of 3 cars, 2 with ops, 1 official, pulled up to the business center housing East Coast Investments. Modern glass and concrete, symbol of success and prosperity, facade hiding fraud and crimes. Anthony Serge gave team orders, and we entered. Security tried to stop, but backed off at badges. We took the elevator to the 8th floor, company office. Glass doors with East Coast Investments logo, soft light, expensive furniture, all breathing success. Receptionist jumped, seeing our group. What? What's happening? She stammered. Investigative Bureau. Anthony Serge replied dryly, showing badge. Where's Alexander James Carter's office? End of hall, right? The girl replied, dazed. But he's in a meeting with execs now. Even better, Anthony Serge nodded to ops. Proceed. We walked down the hall past stunned staff freezing at our procession. I walked beside Anthony Serge, feeling odd calm, like before a decisive shot. Conference room door closed, but voices came through. Anthony Serge flung it open unceremoniously. Around the long table sat about 10, all in expensive suits, faces confident and superior, turning to confusion as uniformed people entered. Alex sat at head, animatedly explaining to colleagues. He froze mid-sentence seeing us, and I noted with satisfaction blood draining from his face when he saw me beside the lead investigator. Alexander James Carter? Anthony Serge asked formally. Yes, Alex stood, glancing around confused. What's this about? You're under arrest on suspicion of crimes under Penal Code sections for large-scale fraud and tax evasion. Anthony Serge stated clearly. The room fell dead silent. Company execs froze like wax figures. Alex paled further. Some mistake, he squeezed out. I'm not. No mistake. Anthony Serge nodded to ops, who approached Alex. We have documents proving your involvement in fund embezzlement and tax dodging, plus a witness ready to testify. Witness? Alex looked around dazed, and suddenly his gaze locked on me. Realization dawned slowly. It's you, he hissed. You set this up. I met his gaze calmly. I just helped justice happen, I replied. And you created the evidence of your guilt yourself, Alexander James. Ops were already cuffing him. Alex jerked but was firmly held. You have no right, he yelled, turning to colleagues. Tell them, call lawyers. But no one moved. Company leadership looked at him with cold detachment. In their eyes, I read one thing, desire to distance from the problem, from the suddenly toxic man. Bastard, Alex hissed at me as they led him out. You'll regret this. I get out, and then... Threat to a witness, Anthony Serge noted calmly. Log it. When Alex was taken, Anthony Serge addressed those present. Folks, everyone stay put. Premises search and document seizure coming. All will give statements. I stepped into the hall, feeling strange emptiness inside. Daniel Oliver approached and put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. Just tired. Long day, but effective. He smiled faintly. Your daughter's safe now. He won't leave holding soon, and when he does, he'll be too busy saving his skin to think revenge. I pulled out my phone to call Emily with good news, but then the screen lit with an incoming call. William Stevens's number. Hello. I felt my heart clench in foreboding. Catherine Reynolds, William Stevens's voice tense. You need to come to the hospital ASAP. Emily's in labor, preterm. The world froze around me. Everything. Alex's arrest, economic crimes, revenge. Suddenly secondary, only one thing mattered. My daughter and her child. On my way, I replied shortly and turned to Daniel Oliver. Need to hospital. Emily's giving birth. He nodded without words. I'll drive you. As we left the building, I glanced last at the police car taking Alex. Head down, shoulders slumped. Defeated foe. But now it brought no satisfaction. Now all thoughts were only of Emily. Sun nearly set, plunging city into dusk. A new phase of our life beginning. phase where Emily becomes a mother and I a grandmother. And whatever happens next, I was ready to protect them both. Daughter and grandchild with the same resolve, I'd protected Emily till now. The car raced through evening town, and mentally I was already at the hospital beside my daughter, holding her hand in her life's most important moment. Moment when new life enters this world. And I swore to myself that new life would be happy and safe, whatever it cost me. Maternity ward hallways seemed endlessly long. Antiseptic smell, dim light, tense quiet, occasionally broken by moans behind closed doors. I paced the corridor, glancing at clock. 3 hours. Emily's been in delivery 3 hours. Catherine Reynolds, sit down, a nurse said gently passing. You'll wear a groove in the floor. I nodded and sank onto the hard hospital couch, but a minute later was up again. Sitting and waiting, not my style, never was. Even in toughest ops, I preferred action over watching. But now I could do nothing, only wait. And pray. Though I'd never been very religious. But now in this hospital hall, I caught myself whispering something like a prayer. Catherine. I turned to the familiar voice and saw Connor at hall's end. He hurried toward me, face anxious and determined. How is she? In labor, I replied shortly. 3 hours already. He stopped beside, unsure what to say next. Awkward pause hung between us. Too much unsaid, too many hurts and disappointments. I'm sorry, he finally said, for a lot. For not being there, for not noticing what our daughter went through, for believing Alex over her. I gave him a long look. His eyes held sincerity, rare for the man who'd once left his family for a young mistress. Not mine to forgive, I finally replied. Emily has to decide if she wants you in her life, in her child's. He nodded, accepting. I know, but I want to fix what I can. Want to be there, if she'll allow. At that moment, the delivery room door opened and William Stevens stepped out. Surgical mask down, sweat beads on forehead. He looked tired, but eyes held something like satisfaction. Congratulations, he said, approaching. It's a grandson. 7.5 pounds, 20 inches. Healthy, strong boy, crying so loud the nurses might go deaf. Warmth spread inside me. Grandson. I have a grandson. New life, new beginning. And Emily, I asked, trying to steady voice tremor. All good, William Stevens replied. Delivery went fine, despite preterm. They're moving her to room now, baby beside in special crib. You can visit in half an hour. He shook Connor's hand, nodded to me and walked down hall, removing surgical gown. Grandson, Connor whispered, and I surprised to see tears in his eyes. We have a grandson, Kate. I nodded silently. Strange feeling overtook me, like life full circle back to start. 26 years ago in this same hospital, I birthed Emily, and Connor waited in hall just like, nervous, pacing. We were young, in love, full of hopes. Who could have guessed life would turn out this way? I'll be in the cafeteria, Connor said, sensing I needed alone time. Call when I can come. I nodded, grateful for his tact. When he left, I leaned back on couch and pulled out phone. Needed a few calls. First, Andrew Victor. How'd the arrest go? I asked, hearing his voice. Smooth, he replied. Carter's in holding, investigators working, seized lots of documents. Preliminary, damage from his schemes at least $50 million. So next 5 years minimum, he won't see freedom. Thanks, I said sincerely, won't forget. Nonsense, he waved off. How's Emily? Gave birth, boy. Congrats. Warmth in his voice. Tell her my best. And if need help any, you know where to call. Next, Daniel Oliver. Just back from Anthony, he said without waiting. Case moving. Carter gave initial statements, trying to bargain leniency for ratting company leadership. But doubt it'll help, too much evidence. And divorce, I asked. After this arrest, he chuckled. Believe me, divorce last on his mind, but just in case, prepped all documents. Hearing next week as planned. Think now it'll be fast-tracked. Carter's in no shape to fight. After calls, I leaned on couch back and closed eyes, tension of recent days easing. Alex in holding under investigation, divorce practically guaranteed. Emily safe, birthed healthy boy. Seemed all ended well, but somehow I felt it wasn't over. Catherine Reynolds, nurse touched my shoulder. You can see your daughter. Room 12. I rose and walked hall. Heart pounded harder each step. Somehow nervous, like first date or big exam. Emily lay on bed, tired, pale, but with happiness on face I hadn't seen in ages. Beside, in clear crib, a tiny bundle. My grandson. I approached carefully and peered in. Tiny face, eyes closed, dark hair fluff, tiny fingers clenched. Perfect miracle. Tears welled, throat lumped. Handsome, right? Emily asked quietly, smiling. Most handsome ever, I replied, gently touching baby's cheek. How you feeling? Tired, Emily admitted, but happy, truly happy for first time in forever. I sat on bed edge and took her hand. It's over, honey. Alex arrested under investigation, divorce practically done. You're safe. Now you can start new life. Thanks, Mom. Emily squeezed my hand. For everything. If not for you. Don't think that, I interrupted gently. All behind. Look forward now. By the way, I nodded to baby, what'll you name him? Emily gazed thoughtfully at son. Thinking Maxwell, she said. Maxwell, Emily's son. How's that? Great name, I approved. Strong, nice, and middle name good. I didn't ask why she chose middle from her name, not father's. Her choice, her right, I respected. Dad's here, I said after pause, in cafeteria. Wants to see you and grandson. Emily tensed. Not sure, she said honestly. Part mad he believed Alex. For vanishing 10 years, then showing and telling me how to live. Other part, he's still my dad and Maxwell's grandpa. Your call. I stroked her hand. But no, people can change, realize mistakes and try fix. Sometimes worth second chance. Emily nodded thoughtfully. Okay, she said after pause. Let him come, but briefly. I'm very tired. I stepped into hall and headed to cafeteria. En route, William Stevens stopped me. Catherine, he said, pulling aside. Need to talk. Something in tone alerted me. Something with Emily? Or baby? No, he shook head. They're fine. Other thing. Nina Peterson called, your neighbor. People came to your apartment looking for documents. She heard noise, then saw 2 men leave building. I frowned. Alex's people? But why? Documents already with investigators. Evidence gathered. He's arrested. And suddenly I got it. Of course. Compromising stuff on himself. Alex obviously kept docs that could hurt him, and now his accomplices trying to find and destroy before investigators get them. Thanks for info, William. I was already pulling phone to call Andrew Victor. I'll handle. I quickly explained to Andrew Victor, and he promised immediate squad to my home and ramped watch on all Alex's contacts and colleagues. Sure something important in your apartment? He asked. Not mine, I replied, hit by sudden insight. Emily and Alex's apartment. We took only Emily's things, but his study untouched. Got it, resolve in Andrew Victor's voice, heading now. I returned to cafeteria, where Connor nervously stirred long cold tea. Emily agreed to see you, I said, sitting across, but one condition. What? He tensed. Be honest. Fully honest why you left. Why no contact all years. What happened with your new family? I knew his marriage to that young woman fell apart after 2 years, but never told Emily. Connor lowered eyes. I'll be honest, he said quietly. Nothing to hide, only ashamed. I nodded, accepting. Come. But remember she's very tired. Don't wear her out. We walked hall and I felt odd peace, like puzzle pieces finally fit. Emily safe, healthy son born, Alex in holding, facing serious time, and even Connor seemed to realize mistakes and want to fix. Of course, challenges ahead. Alex's trial, divorce, Emily adapting to single mom life. But now she had me and maybe her father, if he truly changed. She had a son. New life, new hope. Before room door, Connor stopped and breathed deep. I'm afraid, he admitted, afraid she won't forgive. Forgiveness earned, I replied, but start small. Just be there, support, help. He nodded and opened door resolutely. I stayed in hall, giving them privacy, their talk, their relationship to rebuild, or not, on their own. I went to hall window, outside dark, streetlights swirled rare snowflakes, Spring in our town always fickle, with sudden winter returns. Phone in pocket buzzed, text from Andrew Victor. Carter apartment searched. Study yielded documents confirming even graver crimes. Seems involved in offshore money laundering. Investigators thrilled. Case expanding. I smiled. Well, justice prevails. Alex gets what's due for all. For beating Emily, for his financial schemes. Another buzz. Text from Daniel Oliver. Divorce hearing moved up. Fast track tomorrow. Judge Clarkson took personally. Outcome guaranteed. I turned off phone and sighed deep. First time in days I could relax, danger past, battle won. Quiet laugh from Emily's room. I carefully cracked door and peeked. Connor sat bed edge, holding bundled Maxwell. Face glowed happiness, making me smile involuntarily. Emily watched with peace. "Mom," she called, seeing me, "come in." "We're meeting Grandpa." I entered and stood beside. Small but real family. With past that stays but can be rethought and forgiven, present full of joy from new life, and future now seeming bright and hopeful. I looked at grandson, his tiny face serene in sleep, thinking maternal love the mightiest force on earth. Force that helped protect my daughter. Force that now helps Emily raise son. Force always our support and salvation. "Happy birthday, Maxwell," I whispered, gently touching cheek. Dash, "Welcome to our family." "Maxwell, don't run so fast." Emily watched anxiously as her 5-year-old son dashed down the park path, scattering pigeons. "You'll fall." I walked beside my daughter, smiling. The kid was tireless, all like his grandpa, Connor, same stubborn, energetic, with that spark in eyes. "Don't worry so," I said, adjusting scarf. October sun shone bright, but wind autumn chilly. He needs to learn falling and getting up. "I know," Emily sighed. "Just sometimes I protect him." I nodded, understanding. After all she'd endured, natural. Fear of losing most precious. Desire to shield at any cost. Mother's heart. 5 years since those memorable events. 5 years changing our lives. Sometimes seemed like another reality. Emily changed so much, our world so different. Divorce finalized quick, no hitches. Alex sentenced to 7 years for large-scale fraud and tax evasion, plus 2 more for trying to pressure witnesses from holding. He tried threats to Victoria through cellmates, but got caught red-handed. Victoria, by the way, got new ID and moved cities. As I knew, married, had a kid, now accountant at small firm. Life post-Alex worked out for her too. Emily lived with me at first year toughest, sleepless nights with infant, future fear, occasional panic attacks, but gradually coped, strengthened. Her therapist, Maria Andrews, said never saw such quick recovery after traumatic relationships. "Mom, look." Maxwell ran up, chestnut in palms. "Look how big. Very pretty." I knelt, examining find. "Add to collection." Maxwell nodded vigorously. Home he had whole box of treasures, pebbles, pine cones, feathers, acorns. Little explorer, finding wonder in ordinary. "What can we make?" he asked, holding chestnut to light. "Anything," I smiled. "Little man with matchstick legs or hedgehog or spider." "I want hedgehog," Maxwell declared. "Grandpa will help." "Of course he will." Emily ruffled his hair. "Ask today." Connor kept promise. He really changed, became support for Emily and true grandpa to Maxwell. Every weekend together, zoo, movies, fishing. Connor like making up lost time, atoning for absent years. I held no grudge. Life too short for grudges. And don't we all err? Maine, find strength to admit and try fix. "Will Grandma Vera come for dinner?" Maxwell asked, pocketing chestnut. Grandma Vera, Connor's new wife, kind, quiet woman working librarian. Met 3 years ago at book fair, married year later. Vera hit it off with Emily right away, adored Maxwell, spoiling with homemade baking and picture books. "Of course," Emily replied, "and bring cake, that prune one you love." Maxwell's face lit smile. "And Aunt Nina too?" Nina Peterson, my neighbor at 87, still spry and active. For Maxwell, she was Aunt Nina, though old enough for great-great-grandma. She taught him chess and told amazing stories from her. Long life. "Yes," I nodded. "And Uncle William Stevens, Andrew Victor, Daniel Oliver with wife." Today special, Maxwell's 5th birthday. Celebrating intimate family, if 15 people count intimate. But all these became family, blood or chosen, doesn't matter. Maine, there in tough times and stayed for joys. Maxwell home, Emily pulled son by hand, need to prep for guests. We walked leaf-strewn path, Maxwell bent now and then, picking pretty ones, making bouquet for Mom. Emily smiled, accepting each as precious gift. She'd changed these years, matured, toughened. No more hunted fear in eyes like 5 years ago. Now confidence in self, future, life. After Maxwell's birth, Emily finished design courses and now worked remote, illustrating kids' books. Real talent emerged. Publishers lined up for her work. Last year, even won award for fairy tale collection illustrations. Year ago, bought own apartment. Small but bright, good neighborhood near park. Furnished tastefully, turning cozy nest for her and son. One-room full studio where she spent long hours drawing wondrous worlds for kids' books. Sometimes I'd visit, sit by window chair and watch her work. Those moments filled me with pride. My girl, my strong, talented daughter who'd gone through hell unbroken, built new life from old shards. Mum, Emily broke my thoughts. You're thoughtful today. All good. I smiled. All great, honey. Just recalling past, rejoicing present. She nodded, understanding. We rarely spoke of those events, but they stayed with us, like scar no longer hurting, but reminding of pain endured. You know, Emily said quietly, sometimes I think, what if I hadn't come to you then, if I'd stayed with him, where now? I shook head. No use what ifs. You chose right, hard but right, and see where led. I nodded to Maxwell running ahead, waving leaf bouquet. To happiness. Emily squeezed my hand. Thanks, Mom, for all. If not you. If not you, I interrupted gently. You found strength to leave. Your choice decision. I just helped on path. We reached Emily's home, 5-story brick with cozy yard, kids playing now. Maxwell ran to friends, waving chestnut and excitedly telling. Come, Emily pulled my hand, need cake from fridge and candles set. Her apartment smelled cinnamon and apples. She'd baked strudel from Nina Peterson's recipe, table already set with festive plates, walls hung with colorful flag garlands. On fridge, photos, Maxwell in hospital, first steps, on Grandpa's shoulders. Maxwell with cake last birthday, happy normal life without fear, violence, humiliation. I helped Emily set table, filled with quiet calm joy. Joy we'd coped, stood firm, protected most precious. Our family, love, life. 5 years ago, when Emily stood at my door, scared, beaten, I swore to protect her. And kept that vow, using all knowledge, connections, experience, stopping at nothing. But Maine not that. Maine, Emily found strength to fight, live on, strength to be happy. Think? Emily asked, setting glasses, what Maxwell wishes, blowing candles. I smiled. Something vital for 5-year-old, new toy car or puppy. Maxwell long begged dog, and Emily seemed ready to give in. Know what I'll wish? Emily looked with that special smile always warming my heart. What? For all to stay as is, us together, healthy, happy. For Maxwell grow in love care, no more fear. I hugged daughter, held close, such simple wishes and infinitely important. So it will be, I said, kissing temple. Promise, doorbell announced first guests. Maxwell burst in. Grandpa's here and Grandma Vera brought cake. Celebration began, ordinary family, if millions happen daily. But for us special, because we knew price of this simple happiness, new labor, pain, struggle paid, and cherished like world's most precious treasure. Because nothing more important than family, nothing stronger than maternal love, and no force can stop a mother protecting her child. I watched Emily hug son, face glowing happiness, feeling all worth it. Every step, decision, battle, all led here, to pure unclouded joy, to new life built on old ruins, to happiness protected, preserved, to love that conquered all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support inspires us to delight you daily with new captivating tales. On the main screen, you can already find our next story. We wish you all the best and happiness in life.